To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastmans Elevated for you. So today on the podcast, I have back on my good buddy Dillon Ness. Dillon Ness kills it on the podcast. I use him on Flycast a bunch, and then he's been on this podcast a couple of times. But just this salt of the earth, next level, do-it-yourself, public land, consistently successful bow hunter. So I always really enjoy the conversations, and today we do a deep dive on spot and stalking. We talk a lot about antelope. Dillon's an absolute antelope slayer. And then we branch off and talk about mule deer, and then also talk quite a bit about elk. It's wild. You know, me and Dillon just started hunting together a couple years ago, but we have nearly the same style for this spot and stalk elk hunting. So just made for a great conversation, got me fired up, so I know you guys will enjoy it too. I just want to thank a couple of my sponsors. I want to thank Zamberlan Boots. Zamberlan builds the highest quality boots I've ever worn. The waterproofing on them, it keeps good years after you buy them, not just a couple weeks or a month. So they don't cut any corners as far as craftsmanship, as far as quality of materials. They build the absolute best boots they can. So I've been loving these 320 Trail Light Evo GTX. They're like a low height boot. They just kill it in the mountains. And then this year they came out with some new hiking shoes. I feel like these things were made for me. They're lightweight, which a pound on the foot is like 10 on the back. And so that lightweight really helps to save that leg fatigue throughout the day. And think about it, like one of these big hunts, you may do 40,000 steps in a day. If you're saving a pound off each one of your shoes, that's 40,000 less pounds you have to lift that day. So these lightweight shoes are just absolute killers. So I'm using the 215 Salute GTX RRs. They come in at under 2 pounds, which is wild. And those boots I like to use, they give you a little bit more stability, like side hilling, real gnarly terrain. But those things come in at under 3 pounds. So they're just doing some wild things with boots and shoes and really high quality. So if you're in the market for some new boots, make sure to check these things out. I am absolutely in love with these things. So thanks to Zamberlan for their support of the podcast. I also want to thank Matthews. Matthews are building the best bows out there. I know I use that phrase a lot, but I really mean it. I feel like I'm partnered with the best companies that are producing the best products, and these Matthews bows, man, you'd have a hard time getting me to switch. I'm in love with the last 3 years. The Verdicts, the VXR, the V3, like these bows are just shooters. And again, I know these companies aren't designing equipment for me, but it sure feels like it's designed specifically for me. This V3, it's the quietest bow I've ever shot. It's got no shock after the shot. It's super smooth, great draw cycle. The thing holds. And just really forgiving. Also, these bows, they hold a tune really well. I put a tune at these in the beginning of the season, and I'll check them after 6 months of hunting, early hot seasons, all the way to rain, to cold below zero seasons, and I check my tune after season, and the thing's a perfect bullet hole. So they're just absolute shooters. This V3 has already done really well for me. Like I killed a mule deer down in the desert in January with it. Killed one of my best black bears this spring. Killed a handful of axis over there in Hawaii, including my best axis buck. So this thing has already produced for me, and I can't wait to see what I can do with it this season. So if you're in the market for a new bow, make sure to shoot one of those Matthews and see if it fits you and see if you like it. Because I really believe they're the best bows on the market. And thanks to those guys for their support. I also just wrote an article for Matthews that is going to be on their website. That's all about hunting elk and kind of that style that I like to chase them in, especially those high pressure elk. So you can check that out on their website as well. And thanks for that opportunity to get to write that. So with that, oh yeah, we got thanks again to Eastmans that supports everything I do. They've got I'm set up for a really good season this year. I'm going to have a cameraman with me most of these hunts and try to capture these things. And I've got a good cameraman that I just can't wait to partner up with. So I actually leave today, which is Sunday the 8th. So tonight I'm going to take off and got an early season high country mule deer hunt, which I absolutely love. These high country muleys, it's game time for me. So I'm going to be packing up the truck and getting out of here shortly and starting my season off. So super pumped. But yeah, thanks to Eastmans, everything they do. Make sure to check out our internet research tool, Tag Hub. If you want a subscription to the magazines, use the promo code ELEVATED321. That'll get you $50, both magazines and an outdoor edge knife, or $30, one magazine and an outdoor edge knife. So we've got that promo code on there. Also giving away that Quiet Cat bike. I'm not sure if they've given it away already, but that is through Tag Hub. And yeah, and check out the videos. We're going to be releasing more of my videos. I've got a new one coming up I'm super excited about, but Dan Baccar kills it on there as well. Just does some really good elk hunts. And so you can find that on Eastman's Hunting TV on YouTube or on the Outdoor Channel. And I think I've got it all covered. I'm going to get this out to you guys. It's a great episode, man. This one got me fired up. Talking with my good buddy Dillon all about spot and stalking, and we just really get into the hows and the whys and the ins and outs, how we're moving on these animals and what we're doing to be consistently successful. So I really enjoyed it. I know you guys are going to enjoy it too. Let's get into this thing. So Dillon Ness, he's a guest today. Brian Barney, I'm your host. Eastman's Elevated. Here we go.
What's going on?
Yo, what's happening?
A whole lot. Just, gosh, I always hit that button on Skype that tries to turn on the camera.
Oh man, yeah, that's fine. Like, it's nice to have the camera for like visual cues, but it just like it puts such a lag in the audio, so I don't use it very often.
No, and it always says speaker off, and I always click it, but then I forget it's the camera. But I think I'd figure it out by now.
No worries.
No, what's new?
Oh man, just trying to wrap up this house. We just been working nonstop, trying to get one of these things checked off my list.
Right on. Yeah, shoot. It's go time for you.
Oh man, go time. Few days away.
So sick.
Oh dude, doesn't get
jealous.
any better.
No, that's so sweet. The weather's been looking like it's been pretty nice down there too.
Oh, does it? I haven't even looked at the weather yet. I haven't. I need to
dude.
start getting ready, but it's been cold down there, huh?
It's been pretty mild. Yeah, and
not cold, but
there's
cooler.
Been some rain. Cooler, yeah, and
Yeah.
there's been some rain. Like, oh yeah, my brother's all jacked and ready too, and I'm like, so I was thinking, gosh, you lucky dog, so sweet. I'm excited for you guys. It'll be so sick.
Yeah, it's so nice to get those early hunts in, and like you had an early hunt last year. It's pretty fun to get started in early August or August 10th, isn't it?
It is, yeah, gosh. And when they're just full velvet it seems like they're out all day, you know. It's like, yeah, that's tough to beat, man. Golly. I've been scouring the first come, first serve. I've probably logged into my account 150 times in the past week, and all it pops up is antelope, antelope, antelope. I'm like, oh, just give me a mule deer tag, please.
God,
But
Tony Treach sent me a message this morning. He got a good one out of there.
what?
I knew they'd just kill you.
Dude, I am not kidding you. I've checked it for probably 10 minutes on the hour, every hour for the past week. And that's no lie. Yeah. Yeah, no lie. And I haven't seen one mule deer tag pop up. Yeah. I mean, every antelope tag, every archery antelope tag under the sun, bunch of elk B, and like I told you the other night, I was like, I'm just going to buy the first mule deer tag that pops up, and I'm just going to go for it. But I didn't even get a chance to do that. Yeah.
Well, it still might be one that comes available. I'm not sure if Tony just got his last night or if he was on there for like the opener or whatever, because that wasn't available a handful of days ago, right?
No, yeah. And so I checked it last Friday, and it wasn't up. Like when you and I talked, it wasn't up. And then I checked it Monday morning right away. Boom. And there's a ton of antelope and elk. And then, I just kept checking. And then it's like when you sent me that one that other guy got, and I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But, I guess, still got a couple days, so I'm not giving up hope yet.
Yeah, it's getting right down to it though, huh?
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's one of those deals where it's like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And I'll just work away and go hunt some antelope until I think I'm going to leave August 30th to go to Colorado. So I've got a lot on my plate. So it's like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So
that's the cool thing. Living out west in some of these states, like living in Montana, like getting that archery antelope tag every year. That's that was one of the best moves Montana made, or the Montana Bow Hunters Association pushed for it to get us that season and that tag. And man, it's just so awesome knowing that you're going to get an antelope tag, because most states, like that's, it could be a 1 in 10 year deal.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Most of those states, New Mexico, Arizona, it's like 1 in 10 years. Yeah. And for us, it's like, cross our fingers and knock on some wood, but it's like every year, and it's so exciting. It's one of my favorite hunts. Every year I look forward to it. Granted, it's the beginning of hunting season, but I love chasing those things with the bow.
Mm-hmm. They're just one of the best teachers. It's like, dude, if you get really good at spot and stalk and really improve your skills, like you can kill any animal in any season. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter how good you can call for elk, or it doesn't matter, you don't have to sit water or sit in a blind. But dude, when you build those spot and stalk skills, like you can just take it to any animal out west, and there's no better training for it than antelope season. Like those things are so sharp, and then like it's such open terrain, so you don't get that much to work with, but you figure out how much you can do with a little bit, like hunting those things.
Totally. Yeah. And that, from the day I picked up my bow, the first thing I hunted was an antelope with my bow. And it, that was, gosh, 11 years ago now.
How many times did you fail?
Oh, dude, that first year, that's the thing. But I just kept after it. I think I went on actually, I know for a fact I went on 37 failed stalks that first year before I killed one. But it was, I didn't really, I never got, that's one thing I look back, I never really got frustrated, because it was one of those deals. And back then, I went for them all, it's like, and now I know better, because not every antelope is in a spot where you can kill them. But back then, it was like, oh, good looking buck, I'm going. Where's the wind? I'm just going to try and make it work. But now, year after year after year of hunting those antelope, it's like you start to see when they're in a vulnerable spot, when they're moving towards, towards some undulation, some roll, some country that you can get in and get on them. And now, the last, I don't know, I think I've killed nine in a row, I think now. And it's like, now my stalks are maybe it takes me 4 or 5. The last few years I've gotten, I say pretty lucky, but it's like I kind of wait for the right opportunity, because it's like I have some pretty hard and fast rules when I hunt them now on the stalks that I go on, and it makes them high percentage, and especially when it's hot and it's, in August, it's like you just can't go out and go on a walkabout, I did that too in the beginning, and that never panned out well. It's like you maybe saw a couple antelope 3 miles away, and if you would have just drove the county road and used your pickup as a tool, you could have got a heck of a lot closer to them. But it's like, yeah, you just learn how to stalk, how to use, the wind, that's just second nature now, but it's like, how to get a crosswind, and, yeah, those antelope, there is nothing better than get out and get after those. Just tune up the skills every year. And it's just and now it's just one of those things that I get so excited about, because also on this side of the state, we've got a bunch of antelope, but we've also got a lot of good ones. So it's like, I usually always wait for one that really, really gets me going before I get out and lace them up and go get after them.
Man, that's so killer. 9 years in a row, you got a good streak going. Those things can be really difficult. So, you mentioned like a lot of good things there, like covering country. It seems like antelope hunting is like these vast tracts of land, and so like you were stating, we use our pickups a ton. Cruising those miles and glassing off county roads, and then, you'll walk to a vantage point, or you may go look over into a canyon or something like that. But for the most part, you're really like glassing them and getting those opportunities, like by using the pickup and covering like hundreds of square miles to then find where the antelope are and hunting that antelope. Do you run it the same way, where you're covering a lot of miles, stopping and glassing a bunch, like trying to locate those things?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think to be most effective hunting antelope, I think that's kind of what you've got to do. I mean, in my opinion, it's just, you've got to cover enough country, because you might see 100 antelope, but they all might be on a piece of block in stubble, in cut stubble field, or in flat, low-lying sage, and those aren't antelope that are in a spot to stalk, in my opinion. So it's like, you've got to cover a ton of country, and like you said, grab a vantage point, And the one thing, I think it's always kind of funny, because I hunt this place north of where I live, and it gets quite a bit of pressure, but a lot of guys really stick to the road. I mean, they almost use their vehicles too much. So it's like one of those deals where I have some spots where I know I can stop, and if I walk, 300 yards, I can kind of crest a ridge, creep up real slow, and there's always antelope down in this bottom, but no one else ever stops and walks up there and looks, because it's like they just go to the next one. So yeah, totally. I use my pickup, and tanks upon tanks of fuel, but it's like, I think to find a good antelope, and to find an antelope that's in a good spot to stalk, I think using the pickup or the vehicle as a tool, is so beneficial.
Yeah, man, so spot on. Like, it's what I do. Like, I've got a network of different spots that I like, and then spots where I glass them from. And, like, sometimes that may be, pulling over to the side and using my binoculars and stepping out and covering the country. And then sometimes, like, I'll get way back away from it, where I can look at it with a scope, and I may have to drive a long ways around before I ever make my stalk. But just locating them is key, and it's why antelope are so fun. Is, you spend some time trying to locate them and putting on some miles, but it seems like if you put in the work, you'll earn yourself a stalk. And, the good days, you'll get 5 stalks, but even the mediocre days, it seems like you can always get a stalk. So you spend so much time hunting them, instead of looking for them. But yeah, it seems like that vehicle is key, locating like public land tracks, and sometimes it's just like a narrow land bridge, or a narrow bridge of state land that then unlocks a couple square miles, and then you glass over in those couple square miles, and you could be looking, a couple miles away, 3 miles away, and you see a big herd out there, and you see a nice buck with them, and it's like, oh man, there's a bunch of ungulation out there. And I kind of find antelope, like I'm looking for high percentage. Like, I'm not going to go chase one in the middle of the open, in the middle of a stubble field, and try to crawl in. It just doesn't work. Like, antelope, you have to be out of sight. And sometimes most of the time I'm hunting them on my feet using the ungulation. If I run out of ungulation, I'm not going to crawl for 500 yards. Like, I'm going to use the ungulation, and I may crawl the last 10 yards to get up. But a lot of times, like, your head still has to pop over the ridgeline, whether you're crawling or whether you're low walking, and I guess it's whatever the situation calls for. Like, sometimes it does call for crawling the last little bit. Sometimes you can just duck your head over and kind of walk like that, and then sometimes you're like we used to call it a duck walk in wrestling for your double leg takedown. Yep. Sometimes you're duck walking, but you do whatever's necessary to like stay out of sight of them. But a lot of times antelope, like, I won't hunt them in the middle of a wide open, but like you say, I'm looking for just something to work with, just something, and it doesn't have to be much. Even if I just have a little bit, it's like, okay, well, I'll go out there and then kind of adapt to the situation. He's kind of by a canyon, or he's kind of moving towards this, or I have a low here. Like, I'm going to work it and see how close I can get. And sometimes you only end up 100 yards away or even 150 yards, and you kind of stay put, wait for something to happen. You never want to let them know you're there. But it seems like you don't even know exactly everything you have until you get out there. Do you find that with them too?
Yeah, totally. That is, you literally just took the words out of my mouth. Those are basically my rules to the game when it comes to hunting antelope. I mean, you have to stay out of sight. I mean, I'm almost positive antelope's vision is like 270 degrees. So they can basically see behind them, you know? I mean, their eyes are on the side of their head and they can see everything. So if I can't walk to them, run to them, or I like what you said, I've always looked for the terminology to describe that walk, but the duck walk. If you can't duck walk, run, or walk to them, it's like it starts to turn into a lower percentage stalk because, I mean, antelope, if anyone spent any amount of time out hunting them, I mean, you stick the button of your ball cap above the sage, above a ridge, I mean, they're on you. So it's totally about staying out of sight. And I'm the same way. It's like, I love hunting them when they're on their feet. I think last year was the first one I've killed that was bedded. But it was just a perfect scenario. And so it's like, I love hunting them when they're kind of in transition and moseying along. And like you said, I like to get out there and kind of get in with them because until you're really out there on the prairie, there's a lot more crevice and there's a lot more roll and you don't need a ton. But you have to get out there to see what you're working with. And, I kind of always like guessing where the direction they're heading and start to maybe cut them off a little bit. But also, I mean, antelope have just a total mind of their own. I mean, they can be heading dead west, and the next thing you know, it's like you lost them, and you look over your shoulder and they're behind you. But no, I hunt them the exact same way. I like to get out there, but I 100% stay out of sight, walk, run, or duck crawl, and see kind of how everything unfolds. That's huge, but definitely kind of get within range of them, you know, and like you said, kind of move out. Even if you're moving 100 yards at a time, just kind of cutting the distance, because it only takes a split second for them to walk behind, you know, a big tall piece of sage. Or a few years ago, I killed one that was in some really tall clover, and he was checking a scrape line. And if I wouldn't have moved out there with him, I would have never had a chance. But there was just a window where he walked behind this dead clover, all vision obstructed, and I literally just kind of quickly crept up to him, shot him at 49 yards, you know. So it's like that's spot on.
Man, I love it when the instincts take over. Like, you know, you're just not you're not really making these decisions. You're just moving when you see the opportunity. And I love what you said too about like running after him. Like there is a case in point. There is a time when you do have to run to try to cut him off down a draw or down, you know, when you're hidden and the buck's gonna cross, trying to get yourself into that spot. And I love that. Like that's the funnest for me. And you can't get stuck in only running or only hurrying. Like it's the situation has to call for it. And sometimes the situation when they're bedded, you're moving so slow and so still, and you're not making any noise through the grass, and it takes you forever to move a little bit or crawl a little bit or get into position. But there's a time and place for that buck that's crossing down below you where it's like if I cover 100 yards right now, I can cut him off and sit down and then let him come over the top of that rise or whatever and come right to me. Like I love those fast and furious plays too, but it just comes back to those instincts, just reacting. You know, you get out there and start playing the game and start reacting, and I make a ton of mistakes. Like I'll make a ton of mistakes this year. Like, you know, like you said, lately I've done good with antelope where it's, you know, couple stalks in, 5 plays in, you know, I'll get one killed. But I went last year and didn't kill one, you know, and so I didn't make a ton of plays last year. I didn't give myself a lot of time, but probably 10 anyways. And I've had those things like where I've had to make 20 stalks before I kill one, 30 stalks like your first year. There's a couple years back where, every once in a while these antelope will really humble me, and it'll be the most difficult animal I hunt in that season. And I'll put, I think I had it 20 days in a handful of years ago before I finally killed one. They can be a real bugger. But they're just so good at catching. You just make one mistake, you hurry, and then all of a sudden they expose themselves and see you. Or you think you got to play, and one comes over the rise. There's so many things that can go wrong, even when you're doing your job perfect, But I think that's the fun of the game, and the fun of hunting them is because they're so switched on, they're so challenging. So when it comes together, it means something. And you've killed a couple giants too. You've killed a couple in that 80-inch mark. That's wild, dude.
Yeah. No, I've killed a few good ones, and but I kind of worked my way up to it. I mean, I've killed some, quite a few right around 74, 76, 77, but it was those early experiences, the instinct, not only with tuning up stalking and everything, like you just said, the instincts, that antelope really teach you that too, because going from slow to fast to slow, it totally, you just have to let the situation, the stalk unfold, and you have to truly let your instincts take over. But I mean, that the biggest one I've killed, I think, is 81 and 6/8, and it was one of those deals. I had killed 3 or 4 antelope, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna kill big one this year, and I was driving county roads before season, and I finally found him, and he was on a piece of state land that there's just no way I was gonna kill him, and he just lived there. And so, I mean, every single day, 2 weeks went by, and I just looked at him, and I mean, there was no one around this place. It was way, way out. And finally, I caught him one day, and he started to get a little ruddy, and he started moving over into this other section. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't even got to go look at that. And this was right before, I don't even think, no, I know for a fact there was no such thing as onyx at this point. And so I didn't know what was over that hill. Well, I started tailing him, and it was one of those deals where all those situations, to that point, hundreds of stalks came into play, and it was like he put himself in a bad spot. I stalked him one time and got him killed, and it was just one of those deals. It was so satisfying, killing an antelope of that size with the bow. It was just all the experience up to that point of hunting antelope, and it just was, I'll never forget, killed him right at sunset, and when I walked up to him, it was just one of those surreal moments. It was like, I'm kind of starting to figure it out, it was just so cool. But I like chasing big ones. I mean, the big ones aren't really any harder to put an arrow through than the good ones or the smaller ones. It's just being patient and being diligent to go find a big one. And I mean, I always, like I said, the score doesn't matter a whole lot to me, but an 80-inch antelope, that'll turn a guy's crank real quick. And when you're looking at them. So it's always kind of one of those things that, I've been driving roads here the last couple of weeks, and it's like, I've sent you the video of them. I found one good one, one big one. And I'm going to dedicate a handful of days until I see another one that gets me going and puts himself in a bad spot. So no, super excited, but I love chasing those big antelope.
Yeah, dude, that one you sent me the video of is such a tanker, almost cartoonish, dude. That one's such a good one. But there's some really good ones out there for sure. Usually, I look for one that goes above 70, and if he's above 70, I'm playing ball, But that mid 70s, that 80-incher, the 80-incher has eluded me thus far. But like you say, it's more discipline than anything else of only hunting a buck that goes that big, but they sure sharpen your skills. After you can build those skills, like you said, killing those first 3, and I think I went 3 years before I killed my first one with my bow, and I wasn't as proficient of a bow hunter, back in the day. But then I went on a streak, harvesting a bunch of really good ones and getting it done year after year, and you kind of figure out You figure out what you're looking for and when to move, and you just sharpen those instincts. And I noticed too, the first buckeye stalk of the year, like I'm almost a little nervous, and I got that buck fever a little bit. But it's like after you hunt them for a while and you're making plays with them and making moves, you get real comfortable with being in bow range of an animal you really want, And I think that's key not only for antelope, but for other species throughout the year. You kind of get those first stock jitters out of your system, and you get comfortable in bow range. And then those little targets, they require some shooting. And like you said, killing some of those things at 70 yards. And I'm the same way. Like, man, you got to stretch it out west, and especially on antelope in that open terrain. And so you got to practice at these longer distances and be ready. And I've killed them at 30, which is great, but the open prairie doesn't always set up that way. It's like sometimes, you get a 70-yard shot, and if you can make your shot and you've been practicing all year and sit on it and execute correctly, they die, And so you have to be confident in your shooting out there. And so it really sharpens all skills for the West. And so I just love it for like such a tune-up for like these mule deer that are so susceptible in the early season. Like you say, the velvet hunts that we were talking about, the high country hunts, man. I mean, those things are those things you're definitely not going to get as many plays or as many chances at them. And so like getting those jitters, getting comfortable in bow range, getting comfortable at shooting at critters, range finding, and then just sharpening those instincts. And you just have to learn from it, and you learn from the failures. And by the end of antelope season, unless they've totally spun your mind and you can't keep anything straight, like most of the time you're getting better as you go, And gosh, by the time you're making your third play or your fourth play, you're just so dialed with your instincts and moving and kind of taking what they'll give you, taking what the country and the ungulation and what the antelope will give you, but not pushing it too far where you give up your element of surprise, or you stalk them to failure and they blow out of there. Like, you get over that pretty quick. And I'll make a stupid mistake early in the season and go, gosh, I should have known better than to do that, or should have, you can't cheat the wind on antelope either. They'll wind you, and so a lot of times you're trying to look at the ungulation, and you can move into bow range of that antelope, but the wind isn't right, and you try to convince yourself, oh, maybe it's quartering a little bit, and you get out there and he wins you, and you go, God, that was stupid. But you get those out of the way in these high opportunity hunts. And so like when you come into a high country mule deer hunt or elk season, which we're coming into, like you are dialed. Do you think it really helps sharpen your skills and get you ready for elk and deer?
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too. The first stalk of the year, I mean, it's just like anything in life that it's like that you get jazzed up for, that you prepare for all year long. That first stalk, yeah, there's some jitters, but that's also, I mean, I go into every antelope season, knowing that there's a high probability that I'm just going to get humbled, you know what I mean? Because antelope aren't a given. Like, like I said, yeah, the last few, last 3, 4, whatever, have taken 4 or 5 stalks, but it's like I treat every stalk on an antelope like it's going to be my best opportunity of the entire year to kill an antelope. Like, I just don't take them. It's a high opportunity hunt, but I don't take them lightly, because it's like
that's smart.
You start taking it lightly, and then it's like, then the next time you're going to stalk a 170, 180 inch mule deer, if you're making bad habits in the beginning, it's like, who's to say they're not going to carry through if you get sloppy, you know what I mean? And so it's like I take every antelope stalk. I literally try, like everybody does, but I take it so like it's going to be my only stalk of the year, just like, these high country mule deer hunts and, these elk hunts that were going on. It's like, you might get one fleeting opportunity. You might get one chance. And so it's like, I treat them all, every antelope stalk, like it is that moment. And yeah, totally sharpens the skills. And the other thing I was going to say, that also not only for early season, high country mule deer, but, going into September rut for elk and then November rut for mule deer, these antelope, they rut, middle to end of August into September. They rut super hard they rut hard in September, but they start grouping up a little bit towards the middle and end of August. So it's one of those things too that really keeps you sharp. Not only do you have to, stock up on a smart old antelope buck, but you've also got to fool the other dozen eyes that are out there as well. The does that he's got grouped up and that he's herding around and pushing. So it's also a good tune up for that as well, because, September rolls around, and a lot of the time these big bulls that we get chances at, they've got 12, 15 cows, and it's like, you gotta beat the cows too to get to the bull. So I find that super helpful as well.
Oh man, that's spot on. I love what you said about stalking those things, and I think it rings true for any animal that you get a stalk on. It's like taking it serious, no shortcuts. Don't, like, if you think you're making too much noise, you're making too much noise. If you think he'll see you, he'll see you. It's like you just got to be perfect, and if the minute, like you said it, the minute you start getting lazy or lackadaisical or don't think that antelope, that's the minute you get busted, and it's the same thing on deer and elk. So yeah, you have to take every opportunity super serious, and it reminds me of Hawaii as well. There's axis deer everywhere, and there's good bucks, and you're gonna get multiple plays. But if you don't take it serious and do absolutely everything in your power to get close to the axis deer you can see, you're going to blow them, and you're never going to get an opportunity. You're going to blow the next one too. You just get in this habit of being lazy or lackadaisical or not doing what's necessary. And so, man, it's all means necessary. And like I say, that's being quiet, it's moving slow, it's taking the difficult way every time. It's like you never take a shortcut, And
Yep.
Yeah, you just stated that really well, and I think that rings true for all animals. It's like beginning of the hunt, you first spot a muley, you're like, oh, I'll go make a play, and you make kind of this haphazard play, or you kind of get over there and just see if you can get close, and then you blow them out. And if you don't snap your head in the game and start making these stalks that really count, where you do every footfall matters, every movement matters, like that's how you got to look at it if you want to be successful. It doesn't matter how many opportunities you get. If you always go into it with that attitude, you're just never going to kill anything. So I just thought that was so key what you were stating there, like about your stalks and how you approach them. I think that mental game is so important, and the game kind of changes, right? And so like antelope, some of it's like planned, methodical stalks, but I would say muleys are really the slow, methodical stalks. And then elk are even more so adapt to the situation you're given. Just get over there and then see what you got that you're working with and react. So like these different animals kind of have different tendencies or different, like all the hard rules still apply. Like all of those skills transpose into the next species, but you kind of got to get in the mindset for hunting the species that you're on. Wouldn't you say that's true? Like for antelope and mule deer and elk, they just kind of differ your approach a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And like say these antelope, it can be, get on them when they're on their feet, transition, or you can, if you're lucky, find them in a bed. But then you go to like, these high country mule deer, early in the season, early mule deer, it's more, find them, bed them, first, second bed, then go make your play. And then we get into to September and, middle of September and those elk. And like you said, you almost just have to get yourself into the party, with those elk. And it's like, and then everything kind of unfolds. I mean, that bull last year, it's like, I just had to get in there with them, and kind of see how it worked out. And then late season mule deer, I feel like, differs even a little bit from early mule deer, instead of more so in their bed. I mean, like say that hunt you and I went on, late November last year, it was more like you and I were kind of getting in on them, when they were on their feet, in transition, moving around, just kind of making plays that way. So yeah, I mean, they all have similarities, and there's all, like you said, there's kind of those hard and fast rules. But yeah, I mean, as far as the stock and what you're looking for, from species to species, and kind of progressing throughout the season. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, there's definitely differences.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's Antelope, I stalk quite a few in their bed, or at least I'll move in or make an approach or get closer, and a lot of times they get on their feet before I get there, and then you're just reacting to whatever they're doing, whether they're feeding there, if they're moving or whatever the case. And you brought up a good point too, hunting that rut. That rut, it's just like chaos. It's just like fun. I just love the rut for any of these animals. It's just unreal to take part in that breeding season. And the bucks are still tough to kill. Whatever species, bucks, bulls, they can be really tough to kill. But they're just moving around, and they're taking control of these herds, and that, like, you get a lot of chances during the rut. Those big bucks, they start to get their group of does, but then he's chasing off smaller bucks, and they're always kind of moving, and there's a ton of opportunity to kind of get in there and then make something happen. And so mule deer.
Yeah.
That early season, that's like one of the only times you're really looking for them to bed, it seems like. And this is just like the tactics that I've kind of adopted, like through hunting them, is I just know that the winds are always huge, right? And so antelope, you don't have to worry about mountain winds as much. They're kind of live on the prairie, and so you can kind of take the dominant wind direction. Sometimes you're hunting them in canyons and coulees where you have a little bit of thermal winds, but for the most part, it's pretty steady. And then you come into mule deer season, and those winds will do everything on the mountain, the directionals and the thermals. And so you're trying to dial in these winds, and it just seems like, when they're up and on their feet, like in the morning time, it's just not high percentage in these open basins. They almost have the advantage of the landscape there, and then they also have the advantage of the wind. Those thermals are starting about mid-morning. You have, like, I feel like you've got this window while the mountain is shaded. You got about the first 45 minutes where you got a consistent thermal wind that'll come downhill or down the mountain, and I really use that wind for elk, whether it's first light or whether it's last light. I really use those downhill thermals. But it seems like on mule deer, it's just too fickle when it starts to change an hour into the stalk, and they're hunted so slow and methodically that you're not really making that quick play where you can make it happen in that hour. And so, yeah, like you said, you're watching them and waiting for them to bed, and then waiting for them, their first bed. Sometimes they bed in a good spot, but usually it's in the open, and they're going to move again. And so the reason I don't stalk them there is, like, if you make a play, by the time you get around and get close to him, he's probably going to move anyways, and that's like the worst winds of the day. Like, those thermals are changing, and so it's really switching all over, and you don't have the directionals aren't up yet. And so that afternoon bed is like the way we play the game. In the afternoon bed, he's going to be there for a bit. And you also know those thermals start to get steady, if it's a sunshine, hot day, which is what I'm looking for muley hunting. I want it sunshine, hot, and then I got those thermals riding uphill, so I know I got this steady uphill wind, and also the directionals come up, so it really hides your footfalls and your sounds of you moving in on those mule deer. So it just seems to be a real high percentage, like, play on those mule deer, so you're really looking for them to bed. But that's probably a lot different than the other bow hunting we do, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. Because then it's like, the methodical aspect of early season mule deer, I think is probably the most different than a lot of the other stalks that we're doing, on all these other hunts. Elk, late season mule deer, these antelope, kind of playing them when they're rutting and all that. But the one thing that I really like what you're saying, and the one thing that I love, number one, you can't cheat the wind. And out here on the prairie and, on these elk hunts and that, I really, really love hunting on not a windy day, but a good 15 mile an hour wind. Even maybe 20-ish, but just because of everything's moving, and like grass is moving, sage is moving, trees are moving, so it's like it kind of covers a little bit of your movement. Not only does it cover your movement, it covers a lot of your sound, so, on a year like this year when it's super dry, it knocks down a lot of your sound, so the methodical side of it in the, early season for these mule deer, like you said, the thermals, the directionals, and it's a slower play. But then on the other side, when it's more run and gun with these antelope and these elk, I love. I mean, granted, it's flat, not a lot of thermals out here where we're doing our thing, but yeah, I love a good, strong directional wind that you can, I mean, pretty much trust. You can get a good crosswind on them, because a lot of these animals out here in the prairie, and they won't. I mean, they have about two things on their mind: live and breed. You know what I mean? So they're not going to bed with their nose directly in the wind. So it's like you have to get a crosswind on them. So a good, strong directional wind, I think, is huge. A wind that you can trust. And a lot of these antelope, just going back to antelope, a lot of the antelope that I do kill, it's with a crosswind. I mean, a left to right. He's kind of quartered into it, so I mean, he can smell everything on his backside, and it's like total crosswind. But yeah, no, I can't cheat the wind, but I love a good, strong directional wind. I mean, it's huge. And the other thing too is, like you were saying about the thermals and that, you kind of got, I mean, what I like say last year in Nevada, it's like you kind of have to play them both, have two cards in your hand at the same time. You got to be playing the directional and the thermal, just in case one or the other gives. If you get a cool down or a storm comes in, your thermals are going to drop. So it's like if you have a little directional on one of those steep side hills, kind of playing that as well. So just so much to go into it, but you just can't cheat the wind.
No, you can't. No, but I do like that crosswind you're talking about, a left to right. As long as it's not blowing in their direction, you can get away with about anything with that left to right wind or right to left wind, that sideways wind. So no, it's good to know to use that. And then, like when I'm looking for my shot, on all of these critters really, but on mule deer, like I'm really waiting for them to make the last move. Like very rarely do I shoot one in his bed. And we're talking about these rules per species, but there are no rules as well. Like these are just the situations that we've found that work for us, but creative thinking is rewarded. So like if you see a muley in a spot and he's up feeding and you got a good wind and a ridge in between you, there's nothing that says that you can't roll over there and shoot that buck. And same thing with antelope, you killed that one in his bed. I've killed a handful in their beds, or at least sneaking up and getting in range of their beds, and then they stand up and I shoot them, or they stand up and walk out. And same thing with elk. Like, I tend to hunt elk in their feeding features, which is way different than mule deer. Like, I'm looking for the total opposite thing that I'm looking for when I'm hunting early season mule deer. Elk I want on their feet. I want them usually feeding and not moving. When they're moving, they're so tough to cut off, but sometimes that works too. But the reason I don't hunt them in their beds, it's like you get 20, 30 elk, like when they're rutting and they have a group of cows that all bed, and they seem to bed in thick cover. And they just have the advantage on you in that thick cover. Like to try to go still hunt through that stuff, it just seems like 9 times out of 10 they catch me. And so like I've learned my lesson over the years, like, hey, this isn't working. I'm going to sit here. I know they're bedded in that timber, but I'm going to wait for them to come out tonight. And I love killing elk in the evening because you get that steady downhill thermal. Like the hillside starts to get shaded and you start to get a real consistent wind you can work with, and they start to show themselves. And when you can see an animal, you can see its mannerisms, you can see their mood, their behavior, you can see if they're alert or if they're not. And if you can see them, they can see you. If you can't see them, they can't see you. And so, you can really use these rules to kind of get in close and then, try to make something happen there. But also, like I say, creative thinking is rewarded. And, I have killed a bull in his bed. Like my rule is if I can see all the elk and I can see them in their bed, then I can kind of make this methodical, planned out approach like I would a mule deer and sneak up on that elk in that spot. So I want to know his exact location if I'm going to stalk him in his bed. But if I don't know his exact location, like I'm probably going to bust him in there. And so I just want to sit back. And it seems like half the battle of hunting elk is locating and being in elk. I mean, for all species, it's just being into them, being on them. So when I find a good bull I want to shoot, like I really want to keep that element of surprise. And so I'll shadow them in the morning. I'll maybe look for a chance to cut them off, or when they get to their, when they're looking to bed, they'll kind of feed around. Like, that's a good opportunity. But if that bull gets in the timber on me, like, I don't want to go chase him in that thick trees after he beds down. Like, instead, I'll just sit back and I'll give it all day. But I've got an elk located for the evening. And so, like, I've got the toughest task done. I'm on a bull I want to shoot. I just got to play this evening and see what I get this evening. Is that how kind of – do you look at your approaches that way? Like, for elk specifically, have you ever shot one in its bed, or do you stalk them in their beds, or do you run the same exact program that I'm running?
I run the exact same program. I've shot one in its bed. My very first bull I shot in his bed at 35 yards, but it was just one of those situations where it was like, it was perfect. Like, I looked down there, he was 200 and some yards away, and it was like, oh man, like, I mean, he was a satellite bull, so it was like nothing around. But yeah, I run the same program. I mean, like, I literally walked away from a 360-inch bull this year at 9 o'clock in the morning because he went into some timber draws with 15 cows. And it's like, I was like, I'm just not going to make that play. And so I walked away because it's like, that just turns into low percentage. And it's like, if I don't, I don't even, like you said, I like hunting them when they're on their feet in the evening. Like, that is my absolute favorite. I mean, I've been on elk, like you said, half the battle is finding them. So it's like, I try and shadow them. So it's like that bull this year that I killed, he went into the timber, and it was like, I'm just not going to go in there. Like, I walked away, but it was like, I went back, took a nap, hung out all day. And it's like, I knew where he was going to be come evening. And sure enough, you go in there, they start feeding out, they feed out into the bottoms, and then boom, there's the play to be made, and then you kill them. And I love, like we were saying, you always, want to have an approach that's out of sight and everything, but it's like, I love being able to keep tabs on them. Whether it's just barely peeking around something or barely cresting a ridge, super slow, super easy, but I love being able to keep tabs on them. And that's why I don't like hunting them when they go into thicker timber or thicker brush. So yeah, no, I run the same program as you do. And I mean, it's hunt them in the evening time when they're on their feet, in their feeding feature, transitioning to it. It's just, for me, it's my best chance to get on them and kill them.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, you describe it so well. You've killed some stomper bulls. Like, I think it's, here we are talking elk hunting, and guys by now know the podcast and know that we get together and don't talk about calling, It just seems like this, stalking these bulls, and it's something that you develop. It's a skill set. It's, you can't just decide you're going to spot and stalk bulls and go out and kill the biggest one in the bunch. I mean, you might, if you really dedicate to it, but it's all this experience of hunting these antelope and these mule deer and these elk and making these mistakes and building that stalking skill set. And then once you've built this stalking skill set, you can go in year after year and be successful on these elk. And not only elk, but like, you've killed some slammer bulls. I've killed some slammer bulls. Like, we're able to target the herd bulls, and not that means if you're shooting satellites, like, we get chances at satellites too, they like stalking in on a herd and there's satellites around is money. Those satellites are always moving around the herd, and always giving shots. And, back in my younger years, I killed a lot of elk that way, a lot of satellite bulls. But it's like, if you can build this skill set, you can go into every season expecting to be successful, and you can target the biggest bulls out there, to where calling kills more elk than stalking, I think, like, there's more elk killed by calls than anything else. Like, it's effective, but you got to catch that bull in the right mood, and to try to catch that herd bull in the right mood, he may be in that mood once a season, twice a season, where he's in that mood where he'll call in, or you made the right moves to get close enough to the herd to really piss him off and get him to come in. But it doesn't happen all the time. A lot of times you call up these big bulls and they just go the other way. They take their cows and move away, and like you build this stalking skill, and all of a sudden you can target those bulls for the entire bow season. You can target those bulls any given day you find them, not just the day that they're totally pissed off or right to be called in. And so, man, it's just been highly effective for me, and I know it's been highly effective for you. And it's wild as we compare notes that we hunt them the same way, and we hunt together. And but we haven't been doing it the last 10 years together, and we haven't hunted elk together that much. So it's just wild to hear that you use those exact same tactics that I do, developed on your own, and mine were developed on my own of just what works for us. But yeah, it's pretty crazy, and I think it works in like all different places too. These a lot of these mountain ranges, even, we like to look for more open terrain to hunt them, but most elk mountain ranges, like, they need meadow grass to live. They need openings to live. And so, it's just glassing those openings and seeing them in their feeding features, morning and night, figuring out their program and making a play. But it never seems like you see elk 300 yards down below you. Why is it that you always see elk 4 miles across the draw? Like, it's always a mission to get on those things, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it totally is. And that is just the absolute truth. This range that I'm been looking at that I'm going to go into this year here in Montana, I went and bear hunted it. And that was the one thing when I was in there that I was just taking kind of notes. Because, I was bear hunting, but I was also kind of looking for some new elk spots. And, knowing that, hey, they're probably, going to be moving around a little bit. This isn't going to be necessarily their home in September. But if it is, where is in this range, what is conducive for me to go spot and stalk one and kill one? Because, it's all timber, and it's like, then I start looking at them, and I start looking at these features, sun's starting to set a little bit, and I should have been looking for more bears, but I was looking for elk half the time too. And it's like, I look across and I go, gosh, if there was an elk on that thing, I could probably go over there and kill one. But it was 3 miles away, and there were 8 bulls in that spot. There were 47 different bulls in the whole deal, but it was like, what was cool is I was looking for those spots that would work for my skill set for spotting and stalking. And meadow grass, big sage, side hills, that have meadow grass in them as well. And it's like, every time I looked at it, it was like, oh, there's an elk, there's an elk. But yeah, you're right. It's like a lot of the time you'll be sitting over one and it's 400 yards below you, or there's something to your right. And then you look way across the drainage and it's like, oh, there they are. But those are also the times when, elk, I just got done saying with antelope that I wait for like the stalk, but it's like with those elk, I go for it. Like, I 100% go for it. If I see a bull 2 miles away and there's an hour left, it's like, and he's in a spot that I can go get him, I'm going. Like, full send, full steam ahead, I'm going.
Yeah, you got to be all in on those things, and it's all in on all these species. We started by talking about antelope and the rigs, but dude, I have been so exhausted hunting antelope out on the hot prairies where you see them miles off, and yeah, you may spot them from a pickup or use county roads, but once you see them, you're all in. You're going for them. And same thing with these elk, like locating them is half the battle. And so, a lot of times you just got to get into elk country, and we do a lot of listening, in the dark before, light to see if we can hear them. If you can hear them, you got some located, if you can hear a party, you got some located. And elk like being around other elk. And so, a lot of times when you find a group of cows or you find a bull with some cows, you get over there and then pretty soon there's another bull with some cows. And oh my gosh, there's one down there. Like, they just like to be around other elk. But you have to have that all-in attitude. Like, you see things so far away, and it's like whether I'm going or not isn't even a question. And like you said, like, you're looking for antelope in a good spot, but you're just looking for them, like, not in a bad spot. You're just looking for something to work with, And with those elk, I don't even look for that. If I see an elk and a bull I want to kill, I have to go over there. I've got to go play the winds, and I'm careful not to, like, I hate getting over there and blowing them out. I hate busting elk. I hate spooking anything I'm hunting. but you got to go over there and let that situation develop, because like even if you see a bull in the best spot, by the time you make it to him, he's moved, and they're always so far away. It's just like, okay, there's elk over on that feature. I'm gonna start heading there, and when I get there, I'll let those instincts take over. I've got to see them before they see me. I've got to be on my game. I've got to slow down my pace once I get there, and I know not to go in the deep dark cover for them because I don't want to spook them, but you just get over there and start playing the game, start adapting to the situation you're given, moving when they let you, taking what they'll give you, taking what the country will give you. And a lot of times it doesn't work. Like we play on elk, I'll play on multiple herds before I finally kill the bull I want. Like you're playing, and sometimes they just don't give you enough to work with, or sometimes you're expecting them to be right over the ridge in front of you, and you're not disciplined enough to look left and right, and all of a sudden you've exposed yourself to the elk and they're down right. Or you get over there and the winds you thought were happening, it goes wrong, or a lot of times like I'll just play the game and just never got a chance to go all in. Like moved with them, they didn't give me a chance. I'll be back this evening. Okay, evening, didn't get a chance. I'll be back in the morning or whatever. You just kind of adapt to what they'll give you. It seems like on those elk, which makes them really fun.
Oh yeah, and the one thing, when we're while we're talking about full send, I think one thing that's super important that I've learned, from antelope, elk, everything, when it's just like it's go time, and it's like you got to bust ass to get over there and get in them. The one thing that I have learned is when you do get to the spot, you've almost got to take a split second to like bring yourself back to ground zero, like check yourself real quick and then be like, okay, now it's time to move slow. Because I don't know how many bulls or how many antelope that I've ran or I've ran a mile and a half to get over to them to cut them off. And then in the last 10 seconds, last 10 yards, everything, I just don't gather myself and slow down. And then you blow the whole thing. And if I would have just taken the time real quick, just kind of like a shot process, but even before that, just okay, hey, slow down. They're right here. Trust that they're going to be right here. Move slow, and finish the deal. And that's one thing I guess I could, if I could just say, it's just when you get there, slow down. And that's something that I've learned that's helped me a lot because. And I've seen buddies too, get there and it's like, okay, just take your time, slow down. They're still there, but it's like, don't watch your footfalls. You're going a little too quick. You expose yourself on top of the skyline or on top of a ridge, and it's like the game's over. You just worked your butt off to get there, and instead of sealing the deal and slowing down, it's just like a couple bad moves real quick and the game's over.
Dude, so true. Like that last 10 yards or sometimes last 50 yards or whatever it is.
Yep.
Why is your mind always screaming at you to hurry up and get there, hurry up and get a shot? You just start getting this dose of adrenaline, where you just kind of like stop thinking clearly, and you're right. It's like really getting a hold of yourself. And you said something too, is hunt him like he's still there. I don't know why your mind always says they're gone, maybe because they're gone a lot of the times when you do poke up, but your mind will start playing tricks with you and just go, oh, they're gone. Just walk over this ledge and see if they're there. And you'll walk over like half-assed, and all of a sudden you'll bust the whole thing over, every animal out of there, It's like, I don't know why your mind plays tricks on you, or you get a dose of adrenaline and you stop thinking clearly. So what you said is super important. I think you start getting close and you take a couple deep breaths and go, hey, man, this is your opportunity. This is what you've worked hard for. Make the right moves. Don't hurry over that rock. Hunt him like he's still there. If he's not there, like what I started telling myself is, if he's not there when I get there, at least I'm not going to screw it up, Like, I'm not going to be the reason I don't kill this buck. If he moved off, like, good on him, but I'm going to take my time and sneak up to that spot whether he's there or not, You have to hunt them like they're there, and you have to get a hold of yourself. Don't be in that fog of adrenaline. Like, it's exciting, and that's the reason why we do this. But yeah, you mess up a lot of opportunities being too excited and not paying attention to the details. And just like coming over that ridge, I don't know how many times I've made this mistake where you always have to expose yourself over a ridge or over a hump or over a roll to the animals, most of the time, because moving in the open, they just see you. Unless you can put a tree in between you and them or something like that, you're always coming over a rise or over a hill or over the side of a canyon. You're always exposing yourself, and it really is, going so slow. And take a step, and then look around, look at what exposed to you, look left, look right, and then take a step, look left, look right. Like, really be disciplined, pull up your binos. Like, this is the make or break. This is like it, and you have to see them first or the gig is up, and so like, you got to play the game like that. Every ridgeline you come over, every time they might be there, you have to believe they're there and really expose it slowly and look left, right. Like, I don't know how many times I've been focused on the spot where they were, and I start walking over and I'm looking to my left and my right, but not far enough, and I'm really fixated like on this spot where I think they are. And I walk over and I mess the whole thing up because some animal was to my right that I didn't see, that I didn't look at, or the herd had moved a little bit and now they're in the trees, and I just wasn't disciplined enough to be looking around with my binos and find them. And so, man, you learn through failure, and so you make that mistake enough times, and then hopefully you get better where you just really expose things slow and really take your time. Man, I think that's key.
Yeah, it is. That's so huge. And the the look left, look right thing, it's along the lines of kind of one deal that I always tell myself now, the past few years. It's like, I don't peek. Like, everything inside of you, when you get to that spot or you get to that ridge line, instead of taking it slow, looking left, looking right, glassing the tops of the grass right in front of you to see if you can see tips that are down below. You know what I mean? That's one thing that a buddy told me a long, long time ago. He goes, dude, glass the top of the grass right in front of you, because you can see at the back of something down below you, or you can see a tip of an antler or a tip of an antelope horn, or, and it's amazing if you just take the time and be disciplined enough to bring up your glass, look at that, and then take your glass down, look left, look right, instead of just peeking, and by peeking, I mean like exposing yourself, because it's like everything in you just wants to know right now, are they still down there? But if you just hunt it like they are, and like you said, go so slow, and creep and look left, look right, glass, it's like those opportunities, instead of watching white butts run away from you, it ends with a red arrow, and that's, I mean, it's just the little things. That's what I like what you said, the discipline. That's the one thing that all summer, that's what I think about, even when I'm shooting my bow, is just discipline. Everything you do, discipline. If you just, your whole life, if you just think discipline, it will translate into the woods too, and you will stay diligent enough to just stick to the program.
Man, that's exactly right. Yep. Don't peek. That's so true. Like, and everything in you is screaming to peek, Just get over there, and then you can sit down and glass. And, that goes for even when I'm walking over a new drainage or a new basin, like hunting muleys, to go locate muleys. It's just that discipline and not skylining myself, crawling over the top of that ridge line, or walking, but every step I'm glassing like the grass, like you were saying, or down below in the drainage, making sure there's nothing there, but never standing up straight on that skyline, always getting down. Like, a skyline human really sticks out. And, just doing that the whole season, and it just, like, it equates into more opportunities, more chances. Like you're saying, you don't spook them or blow them up as much. So, dude, it's a fun game, isn't it? Out west, like, antelope, mule deer, elk, here we come. Antelope, mule deer, elk, mule deer. It's pretty much our season, But, dude, it's pretty fun. It's right upon us. Can't wait.
It is game time, man, and I am so juiced.
Yep. Well, a handful more days. You're getting your work done and setting up for some good antelope hunting, huh? And who knows? Maybe you'll be able. Well, you do have an early season mule deer tag. It's just a little bit further down the road.
Yep, got one, and who knows? Here in the next 2-3 days, I might be bahawing down for an earlier one. So I'm gonna keep checking that darn first come first serve list.
Yeah, well, and you got that one mule deer tag you have, man. That's extreme country, like extreme high country. And then, yeah, it's an early season hunt. Just takes place in September. But man, that's a super cool place. You got to be jacked to go hunt that extreme country.
Oh, I am. Yeah, no, and I put in the amount of work that I put in this summer preparing for it. I mean, I get after it every summer, but this summer I've taken it to a whole nother level because it's one of those deals where it's more extreme than anything I've done, and I know that it's going to be bigger than I can even probably imagine. So it's like I want to be able to take it to the mountain and know that, hey, I've done the work, and so no matter what, I'm going to get to where I need to get. If I need to move spots, I'm going to move spots, and I'm not leaving until I'm packing one out. And it's just, I'm really excited for the unknown of it. I mean, I've spent so much time on maps and everything. I'm excited for the unknown, and I'm excited for the challenge. And it's like, I know deer are there. So it's like, it's just a matter of turning them up. So no, I can't wait. And yeah, that's only a short 3 weeks away too. So I'm super jacked.
Dude, it's like what you talk about, like talking about your approach and moving camp and readying yourself and putting in the work this summer. Like, man, this whole deal like just starts and ends with the mind, doesn't it? I mean, this whole podcast has been about spotting and stalking and the tactics and, you know, the mindset that goes into that. But really, success lies between the ears. Like, it's like you just decide it's something you want, and you decide that, you know, you're going to put in the work, and you decide that, okay, on this hunt, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to, I know I'm going to have adversity that I'm going to have to get past. I know that I'm going to have tough weather that I'm going to have to sit out, and that may be rainstorms and snowstorms and lightning, but man, it all starts and ends with the mind. Like, wouldn't you say like you're one asset, and like you're an absolute athlete, you're really good with your bow, but like if you had to pick one asset that made you successful, like it's persistence. It's in the mind. It's like it, you know, sure it's patience, and sure it's building these skill sets, and sure but it's like deciding that's what you want and that's what you love in life, and then like embracing it and going all in. Like what would you attribute your success to?
It's 100%. It's 100% between my ears. And in anything that I've ever done, it's one of those things. And I think I think a lot of people would say the same. You have to know what you want, and you have to know how to go get it. And if you don't know how to go get it, just work and just work and just work and just work and harden your mind. I mean, by no means am I a triathlon athlete or anything like that, but it's like I'll work a 10-hour day, and then I'll come home and go run in a sweatshirt on the asphalt on Highway 87 for 5, 6, 7, 8 miles, 95-degree temp with a sweatshirt on, just because I know it's going to suck. And I know, but you know what? If I do cruddy things now and just keep going, it just calluses your mind. And the one thing that all of us guys who bow hunt know, and like you always say, failure is a prerequisite to success. And it's like, it is, but it's how you deal with it. And it's like, if you riding out storms, you know, I mean, how many times, I mean, you and I ride out thunderstorms on the river. Instead of pushing out, we ride them out, because it's like, you know what? Yeah, we're not 10 miles back in the backcountry, whatever, but it's like, you know what? It's a mental thing. It's like, oh yeah, remember in July when we just rode that one out on the river and that big crack boom, you know, it's like, it's all between the ears. And that's what I would attribute. I mean, most all of it too. It's like, I really know what I want. I know where I want to be, and I know the goals. I set goals for myself, and it's like, I know every single day I've just got to put in the work, because it's like, I'm not Levi Morgan with the bow. I'm not Cam Haynes with my tennis shoes. You know, it's like, but to get there, it's like, I know what I've got to do, and I just got to do it every single day.
Oh man, so true. All right, you got me fired up for season. I'm ready to go hunt. Like, few days left and cut these legs loose. Yeah, man. That's good stuff. That's exactly right. It's just so fun, this endeavor that we found that, you know, we truly love to do, and then embrace it and willing to put in all this work towards it. You know, it's so fun to have that in life. Like, we're definitely, a couple of the lucky ones for sure. So, man, well, I really appreciate you. I can't think of a better guest to have on to talk spot and stalking than you. So, dude, that was awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. And good luck here next week. And I can't wait to hear about it. So
yeah, we'll keep in touch. We got some hunts coming up too. So yeah, we'll be all in here before we know it. So yeah, thanks again, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, later, Brian.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Oh man, I told you that was a great podcast. Really appreciate Dillon for all his time. Like I say, I use him on Flycast all the time. Have him on this podcast quite a bit, and I like bringing in new guests, and I also like these reoccurring guests, these guests that I've had great conversations with that add so much value to the podcast and to what we're trying to promote here in Next Level Western Hunting. So I just really appreciate Dillon. He's always he's always available, or makes himself available to be on the podcast and take the time out of his busy schedule. So I just really appreciate him. And just want to thank my sponsors as well. I really appreciate them as they help pay for all this time that goes into the podcast. So thanks to Zamberlan Boots and Matthews Bows. And I truly believe in these companies. I use all their gear, and it is the best gear that I've ever used. And so if you get a chance, or if you're in the market for any of this gear, any of the sponsors of the podcast, just check it out. I'm not saying you have to buy it, but check it out and compare it to the other stuff out on the market. And I guarantee that you'll be impressed with it, and probably end up with it in your pack, or in your hands, or on your feet like Zamberlan. So thanks to those guys. All right. Thanks to Eastmans. Man, I've got this hunt coming up. I couldn't be more pumped. There's always so many things to get done with work and responsibilities and family, and make sure that everything's taken care of, but I'm just about there. Like, we'll get out this podcast. We'll get out a Flycast. Man, I mean, gotta clean out the truck, switch my blinkers. The god dang blinkers in these Toyotas are always going out, but I think I've got it fixed, some Toyota bulbs, and I think I'll be all right. But yeah, I got to do that, and pretty much just throw my stuff in my pack. I got everything sitting there, and man, I'm bow hunting. Gonna try to get in there a day early. Gonna try to capture the whole thing and see what I can do. And I don't know, maybe a week, maybe 10 days, kind of whatever it takes. I think I do have a hard cut off at about 10 days or so, and I'll be totally out of rations at that point. But man, I'm all in. It's high country mule deer, one of my favorite mountain ranges. Let's go. I mean, it's time. So I'm pumped. The backcountry test, here it comes. This is what all the work's been for, the entire year's been for, and what I've been leading up to. So man, I can't wait. All right, I'm going to get out this podcast. I'm going to get my work done and get on the road, and 2 more days, and I'll be bow hunting. God, it just doesn't get any better than that. Thank you guys for the support. I appreciate you, and we'll check in with you next week.